Welcome to the Cory Lee Show, where our focus is on building leaders and transforming culture. My name is Cory Lee, and in each episode, I aspire to ignite something on the inside of you that encourages you to grow yourself and to make an impact on the world around you. Welcome to the Cory Lee Show. Hey guys, welcome to the Cory Lee Show. Got another super exciting episode today. In fact, was really introduced to my new friend here, Jon Sanders, by somebody that if you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard him on a couple of times, especially recently, Mr. Dr. Phil Carson. And he introduced me to Jon, told me, spoke very highly of Jon. We connected, and I was just like, man, yeah, this is somebody I really want to get to know more, and also introduce to you guys, the listeners, because he's doing a lot of amazing things. And so, Jon, welcome to the Cory Lee Show.
Cory, thank you, my friend. Any friend of Dr. Phil is a friend of mine, and so he spoke very highly of you as well, and I'm honored to get to be on your show, man. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And so, Jon, you do a good bit of things. One, your background is you got some background in church. So you've been a pastor, you're a fireman, you got your own podcast, you've written a book. And one of the things you do now is you created this podcast, but also a group called Entre Pastors, where you really help leaders of churches increase their income by creating jobs and identifying their God-given talents to develop those into streams of income and achieve financial freedom. And I think that's absolutely awesome. But a lot of the people who listen to our podcast, they're in that entrepreneur lane, they're in that leadership lane. And I would just love to hear maybe some of your leadership journey. Take us on some of your journey that you've had there.
Absolutely. I'll just give you kind of the 30,000 foot overview. That's what I'm trying to say of my life story. I grew up in pastoral ministry. My dad was a pastor, and I had a good experience with that, but that was not what I wanted to do with my life. That was not the plan. I actually set my sights on a career in the fire service as a full-time, career firefighter, and I was able to achieve that at a pretty early age. I went into that and thought, I'm going to work 30 years as a firefighter and retire at the age of 51 with a full pension, and I'll, figure out what else I want to go do next. And then God just messed up all my plans, man. Like he literally called me into ministry. He called me to preach. I did my best. Believe me when I tell you, I tried to outrun that. I was like, God, I'll serve you in any way. Please don't make me preach. I was so scared. I felt so unqualified and ill-equipped. Long story short, he won that wrestling match, and I came to a place of surrender, and I just said, if this is what you want from me, I'll obey, I'll do this. And that led us on this incredible journey. We moved out to South Dakota. We became church planters, and there's really an entrepreneurial story here. I just didn't recognize it as the story was being written. It turns out church planters by nature are very entrepreneurial, and I didn't know that God had wired me to be an entrepreneur. But here we came into this little rural town in South Dakota, planted a church. Over the 17 years that we were in that leadership role, that church grew into 6 different locations. So we were constantly launching another campus in another location. And that was a huge vision for a while that I pursued. And so a lot of leadership lessons along the way that I learned in that role of not just being a pastor, but also a pastor of a church that had a vision to grow and to start new locations. And certainly I've had a lot of leadership opportunities in the business community as well. In the last few years, I've really leaned more into the business side of my ministry as an entrepreneur, starting multiple businesses. And I found that I love building teams. I love building people. And at the end of the day, it really boils down to relationships. And if you can be a good leader and build strong teams, you can build a good business. If you take care of your customers and build good relationships there, you can build a great business. So that's just kind of a little bit of the, leadership overview in the career that I've had up to this point.
Yeah, man, I love that. Man, that's good stuff right there. I want to go back to something you were talking about, how you're doing the fireman thing and you get this calling or this stirring, and I feel like there's a lot of people that have this thing on the inside of them that you don't, it's hard to put language around. And so can you talk to us a little bit more about that wrestling match of in any way to put language to what you were
Yeah.
feeling in that moment, and how did you define, like, oh, this is what you're asking me to do? Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't want to just assume everyone is at the same place in their spiritual walk. So this may mean different things to different people. But for me, someone who's had a relationship with the Lord for a long time, my faith has been an integral part of my life. I kind of have learned, if you will, to hear God's voice, not audibly. I've never heard him speak audibly, but just to kind of know when you know, like that he's stirring something. And for me, that often looks like a restlessness. Like if as I think back to that season, there was an unexplainable restlessness that I couldn't explain. Like I had this desire to move, even though I had a job that I had wanted for a lot of many years and had worked hard to get. All of a sudden, I have this desire to move. Like, what's that about? And there was just a restlessness. And then here's another thing that might be a good indicator. Other people started to see it in me even before I saw it in myself. I had other people kind of calling out some of those leadership things that they saw in me. One time I have where the summer it really came to a head, if you will, is I had the opportunity to fill in and preach at my church, and I did not want to do it. My dad asked me, he said, all of our pastors are going to be gone on this particular Sunday. Would you mind preaching? And I heard myself say yes, even though everything in me was screaming, no, don't do that. Well, I did. And I had so many people coming up after that first sermon, and it was probably terrible. I'm sure it was, but I had so many people coming up to me saying, "Jon, you have a gift here. Like, are you sure you're supposed to be, fighting fires?" Like, and that was the last thing I wanted to hear because what they didn't know was in that season I had such conviction, like I was really wrestling with this, and so to hear all of those voices, it was just confirming what I was already kind of wrestling with inside. So I think sometimes there's just that inner a lack of peace maybe, or maybe a longing sometimes, like that it maybe for some people you actually want to be doing something else. In my case, I didn't really want to be doing that, at least not initially. But yeah, that lack of peace, that stirring on the inside, I think it's good to lean into that sometimes because I think there's some really good stuff on the other side of that if we're willing to face that a little bit. And for me, that meant eventually that meant leaving a job that I thought was my dream job. Now, I didn't know years later God would give me that career back. Currently, I'm full time in the fire service again and have been for the last 9 years for the city of Sioux Falls. So it's kind of cool how God writes stories that are different than how we would have written them or seen them go. But yeah, if there's anyone that's kind of wrestling with that inner stirring, that holy discontent, that restlessness, pull those threads, see where that goes, because it's quite possible there's a bigger story that's being written if you're willing to lean into it.
Yeah, yeah, man, and that I'm glad I asked you that because I think that is so helpful for a lot of people because you have this, and I like the way you said that restlessness, but then as you start to pull those strings, you start to give attention to it, and it reminds me of Moses says he's out in the wilderness, he sees the burning bush, but it wasn't until he turned aside to pay attention to it that the Lord started to speak to him, right? That's when the Lord started to speak, is when he turned attention. So pulling those strings there, I love the way you described that. I think that's really helpful. You mentioned that moment of surrender, and I'm just curious about something on that. So when you said, "All right, okay, all right, I'll do this," did you go out and find something, or did a door open up for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And by the way, interesting that you mentioned Moses and the burning bush because that was my experience. For those that know that story, God is calling Moses into this impossible task, and Moses is telling him all the reasons why he has the wrong guy. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to explain to the Lord, like, listen, I'm not old enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not experienced enough. Like, there's a lot of reasons why I'm not the guy for this assignment, but I feel like this is what you're asking me to do. My moment of surrender came at the point where essentially I heard God saying to me, Jon, I don't need you to bring anything to the table other than an obedient heart. Like,
Mm.
if you're surrendered to me, I can do the heavy lifting. I can show the world what's possible through the life of a surrendered servant. I just need you to be willing, not qualified. I'll handle the stuff. Like, so that was big for me to kind of come to that point of surrender. And then from there, the door started open. It's not something I went and sought. The quick backstory to that is for years, our church at the time we lived in Peoria, Illinois, and our church supported an elderly, missionary out here where I'm living today in South Dakota. And we would send teams of people every summer out to this guy's mission basically to help him run a week-long day camp. We called it our annual missions trip. And there were a lot of years my wife and I went on that trip as teenagers just to help, whatever, never thinking I'd live out here. And this old guy would say, pray that God would send someone here to start a church. And I made the mistake of saying, Dear Lord, please send someone to Flandreau to start a church. And eventually, as I came to that place of surrender and started to say, okay, where would you have me go? And what's the next step? God showed me an answer to a prayer I had been praying for a while. Lord, send someone to Flandreau to start a church. And I was like, well, that's not what I meant. Like I was praying that you'd send somebody, not me. I wasn't, suggesting I'd be that person. But yeah, that was kind of the very short version of the backstory of a relationship that we had with this community and with someone here. And God said, I've got a place for you to go, and I'm going to have you go start a church there. So, in the summer of 2004, so a little over 20 years ago now, we left a career in the fire service and moved our young family at the time out here and planted a church and led it until early 2020. And in that time, saw it grow into 6 different physical locations and an online location. And so it's been a wild journey.
Yeah. And that's powerful. And one of the reasons I ask that is even if you're listening, you're not a pastor or even in ministry. What I hear in you is these church planners are very entrepreneurial. And a
Yeah.
lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have this stirring of, ooh, I want to start another arm of my business. Ooh, I want to start another location. And we get that restlessness, if you will. And this is something that I'm learning a lot of times used to when I would get that restlessness, man, I'd go make something happen. All right. Or I'd go do this. Right. And what I've learned a little more now is I really like the way you described it. Pull on those threads. I don't have to make anything happen. I don't have to strive. I can be a little patient. And I can start to listen to where he's leading me. And man, I don't have to do all the forcing or anything. Just take that first next step that he is showing me, even in the business world. And man, that's been a powerful lesson.
Well, it's a lesson I'm still learning, and I promise I didn't do it perfectly as a pastor. Like, quite honestly, I might have led too fast, too quickly, because again, I didn't recognize. I guess that's pretty common for entrepreneurs to just always see the next thing. We see opportunity in everything. We're energized by that. It's a feature for sure, but it also can be a flaw in, it's maybe two sides of the same coin. That I think it just takes discipline to do what you just described, Cory, to learn how to sometimes slow down, to get some other input. That's very frustrating to most of us as entrepreneurs. Like, why would I slow down? Why would I listen to someone else, tell me why something might not work? Like, that's very annoying. But actually, there's probably wisdom in that as well. So I'm still learning that, to be honest with you. I certainly have not arrived at that, but everything you said is true.
Yeah, man, I'm learning. There you go. I'm
Yeah.
learning. Hey, it's pretty impressive. You say you go there and you guys develop 6 locations, and you mentioned even some of the things you love to do are building teams. Like, uh, if we want to scale a business, if we want to scale the ministry, if we want to scale anything, we got to develop people. I love what John Maxwell talks about is like, if I can do anything, like if I can accomplish my dreams by myself, then I'm really not dreaming big enough. I got a big
Yeah.
dream. I need a big team. And I would just love, maybe you can give us some, a couple principles or a couple things you try to go through whenever you're building a team, maybe some key points that you're looking for as you start to build people and teams.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things I'll tell you, you just kind of touched on it, is you have to have a vision to build a team if it's going to last. Like, people are drawn to vision, so people want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. So don't be afraid to cast that vision for, man, let's do this. Let's build this thing. Let's take the hill, whatever that looks like. Let's make a difference in this arena, in this community, whatever your vision is. that starts to draw people to you. I think another area that leaders really struggle to build teams and to pass off, a vision to more people is we become the bottleneck of the organization because we are so hesitant to give people responsibility and authority. Like sometimes we're good giving responsibility away and say, hey, this is your job. But a lot of times we struggle to give the authority that is required for someone to really do that job and to run with it. And I think that's where, as leaders, a lot of times we get in our own way, we get in the way of others by failing to delegate and by failing to hand things off. And I'm not saying I think I've arrived in that, but I do think over the years I've demonstrated that I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to trust people. And it is scary when you trust people because guess what? They're people. They will make mistakes. They will walk away. They will let you down at times. But I still find like you can respond to that by shrinking back and going, I'm never trusting anyone again. I'm just going to keep this thing small because I don't want to give this away to other people. You can do that. And I mean, maybe there's some business applications where that's fine to do that maybe, but for me, I want to build something that's bigger than me, and as you said, that requires a team. And then if that's the case, I have to be a delegator. I have to give not just the job away, but I have to give the authority, and then that means I'm not making certain decisions, and I have to live with the decisions that my team is making. But then there again comes leadership. I'm coaching them around that. I'm helping them grow and develop. And why do we think the way we think? And why are we making the decisions the way we're making them? So I just find that I thrive in helping people. I love helping people get to the next level in their life, even if that means at some point they graduate beyond me and leave my team to go do something else. Like at the end of the day, I want people to look back and see that God used me in their life in a powerful way to help them elevate. And so I think that takes an abundance mindset, by the way. That's another principle I would share. When we think in scarcity, we hold too tightly to things. We cling to things that we need to hold honestly a little bit more loosely. And so with people, man, while you have them, love them well, serve them well, hold them, but also don't hold too tightly because they're going to outgrow you at some point, and that's okay. That's a good thing. And lead in such a way that it makes it possible for some of your best people to leave and to go to the next level of whatever that looks like, as their story is being written. So I just see God bringing people into my life for a season, and let's mutually serve and help one another in this season, and then let's leave better for it, whenever that time comes. And I just think if we approached our businesses that way, we would see people differently. We would treat people differently.
Yeah, yeah. I've kind of landed on really what you just said right there of people. There are a few relationships that last forever. But I have noticed that a lot of those it's for a season. Enjoy that for a season, and then wish them the best as they continue to go, or you continue to go as well. Um, yeah, yeah, good stuff.
It's an empowering thing to really just lean into that as a leader because it gives your team permission to know that you're not holding them back, that they don't have to sneak around your back to try to, improve their life or to elevate to the next thing, whatever that is, that if they actually believe that you mean what you say when you're committed. Like I'll give a business example. Right now I've got guys in one of my businesses, pretty almost every one of the guys that does work for me, they all want to start their own business at some point, and they're young guys. And guess what? I'm encouraging them in that. I'm telling them like, I'll help you when the time comes. I will celebrate you and help you launch out and do the very thing. You might actually be taking some of my customers, but again, an abundance mentality doesn't fight that. It says there's plenty of room for all of us here, and I'll help you get there. But in the meantime, you probably have a few things to learn, and I can teach you some stuff. And I have learned some things that you probably don't know yet. So, like, let me teach you. Let's work together. And when the time comes, know that you don't have to be afraid of approaching me with the opportunity to graduate and to move on. Like, I'll help you and celebrate you in that. I just think it creates a really healthy team culture when you're building one.
Yeah. Man, 100% with you, man. There is no need for the lack mentality or scarcity mentality. And I like to give an example of like, if you don't believe that, just go stand out in the grass and try to count the blades of grass at your feet, or count count the pine needles on one branch of one pine tree, And I had a guy when we opened up our very first business. It was a physical therapy clinic. I got the opportunity to. There's a space of time where I didn't have any work as we were trying to launch it, and I had a company reach out to me. It's like, "Hey, we got somebody going on maternity leave. Can you help?" And I was like, "Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode of the Cory Lee Show. Y'all, I am on a mission to build leaders and to transform culture. So if you're looking for a speaker who speaks directly to the heart, a mentor to come alongside you and your team, or if you're in a position where you're looking for a personal coach who embraces where you are and also believes in who you could become, then I would be honored to walk this path with you. Simply reach out to me on my email at Cory@CoryLeeLeadership.com. Look, let's make your vision a reality. Contact me, and together we'll navigate the path from aspiration to achievement. Your transformation, it starts now. I can, but I do want you to know that I'm going to open up my own business. And honestly, I'm probably going to be your nearest competitor because we're really close to each other. And the guy said, "Yeah, come on anyway." And it was so amazing because that guy, he helped me to say, "Hey, when you're trying to get carriers, insurance carriers, here's what you do. This is what you look for. Hey, when you do this, think about this. Consider doing billing like this." And the guy was above and beyond. He had no lack scarcity mindset, and
Yeah.
it was so freeing and so empowering for me. Something I want to ask you, John, is I was just thinking about this as you're talking. You've written a book. You talk about, you got a couple of businesses. You're still with the fire, doing the fireman thing. You have got something figured out, or tapped into something that I don't know if a lot of people struggle with, and that's maximizing your time. I
Mm,
would love to hear your process, because I know you got to have one. That's not by accident. I know
yeah.
it's, and so I would love to hear maybe your discipline around maximizing your time.
Yeah, that's good. I'm still trying to figure out if this is a flaw or a feature of mine to have so many irons in the fire. And I say that somewhat jokingly and somewhat seriously, because I there's that adage out there, and I think it's good wisdom most of the time that says, man, instead of trying to do seven things, just focus on doing one thing really, really well. And I actually think that's great advice for a lot of people, and I'm still trying to figure out if that's great advice for me or not. And I say that with all seriousness, like, is this just a feature of how God has made me to have the ability to the capacity to be involved in multiple things? Because but it's not just me. I look around at other leaders that I admire, and it's like, how do they get so much accomplished? How do they own, multiple businesses and all of this? And here's something I learned a long time ago, and here's a takeaway. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. Some of us may have more talent than others, some of us may have more money than others, but the one resource that is equal playing field is time. We all have 24 hours in a day. And so many, many years ago, as my influence was starting to grow in the church world, what I recognized was if I want to steward this well, I have to manage my time well. And so it's been a discipline over the years to get good at managing my time. But at the end of the day, it simply comes down to just that, budgeting the time that you have and putting the big rocks in the calendar. So I live by my calendar. Some people think that sounds really restrictive, but I find freedom in it. People look at my calendar and go, "What is wrong with you?" But guess what? I don't live my day responding to emergencies all the time. Like, I plan my life and I fit the important things in. And it's crazy when a friend calls me up and says, "Hey, do you have time to get together for a conversation?" As a matter of fact, I do. And I can do that in addition to a lot of these other things because I'm living my life on purpose. I still look at my calendar sometimes and go, there may be a little bit too much going on there. Maybe I need to, and maybe that's just for a season. Like, I don't think 20 years from now I want my calendar to look exactly like it does today. But currently, I will tell you this: no matter what direction I'm moving when I get up out of bed in the morning, is I'm having fun. I'm excited for the day. I don't look at any day and go, ugh, bummer. Like, I'm not looking forward to the day I have. Like, I love the life that that I've been able to build, and I'm grateful for it. And so for me, I wake up early each day. I have a pretty disciplined morning routine. That's one thing I would say, just as a takeaway, that's been part of my process and discipline over the years, is to really get dialed in on capturing those first hours of the day. I've come to love them. And I probably get more accomplished in those first few early hours of the day than maybe a lot of people do in the entirety of their day, because I'm waking up with intention about some things that need to happen in order to really set me on pace to have a really good day. But yeah, man, it's just a matter of being disciplined and managing your calendar and putting the important things on there and saying no to things. So I'll tell you one thing, I'll give an example of one thing I say no to that might sound sacrilegious to a lot of our listeners, and that's TV. Corey, I just years ago got to the place of deciding I don't have time to watch TV in my life. I, I I love football, so I watch football in the football season, and other than just maybe an occasional show here or there, I just don't watch a lot of TV. I'm not saying that as in judgment of people who can sit and binge an entire series on Netflix in an evening. It's just for me, I need to say no to that in order to be able to say yes to the things that are more important to me. And so that's just one example of something that in saying yes to a lot of things, you're going to have to say no to some other things on your calendar. So hopefully that's helpful. And maybe I need therapy if I were to show you my calendar and what it looks like. But if you're going to be involved in a lot of things, you have to be organized and disciplined, or it's just going to be chaos. And I don't feel like my life is in chaos at all. I live with a lot of structure and order to my day, and I'm able to be involved in a lot of things.
Absolutely. Boy, that'll preach right there, John. That'll preach, man. I like it.
Oh,
Uh, See, I'm with you, man. I am very I like spontaneity. I like a lot of spontaneity. But boy, my time, I am very structured with my time. Try to be anyway. But there's also grace in that as well,
sure.
like you're saying. But you said something that's really important, I think, to reinforce there is anytime I say yes to something, I'm actually saying no to something else. You talked about I'm saying no to the TV. Well, so you can give your yes to something else. But if you said
Yeah.
yes to the TV, I'm saying no to something else. And so this is more of a for me question. I don't know if this will help anybody who's listening. Maybe it will. But man, I'm always trying to grow and tweak and those kind of things whenever it comes to maximizing time in your calendar or however you do it. How far out are you kind of planning your are you doing day to day, doing week to week, month to month? Like how are you looking at that?
Yeah, it's interesting. With my fire schedule, which is obviously one of the big rocks, I could tell you 10 years from today what my work schedule is, just because it doesn't change. It is what it is. And so like that literally is mapped out and will be until the day I step away from that. With other things around my Entree Pastors platform, I have Calendly. It's a tool, it's a scheduling tool that people can use. So, and the beauty of that is, again, I can build that to fit my life as I need it. But people have the ability to go 3 months out on my calendar and schedule, a podcast interview or a coaching session with me or whatever. Um, Generally, they're not 3 months out. I would say my calendar is pretty solidly booked out about a month in advance. It doesn't mean there's no margin in there. It doesn't mean, again, that you couldn't call me up today and say, hey, can you squeeze me in for a conversation? I can, because I've built some systems in place where there is still room for life to happen. Because I like spontaneity as well. It's one of the things I love about my job in the fire department. You never know what any day's going to give, and you don't come in with this big plan, because at any point, that plan's going out the window and you're going to be running to who knows where. I love that about life. But also, in order to have a life that I desire, I recognize there is a need for structure. And so, the very thing that might feel suffocating to some is actually the tool that brings liberation, as crazy as that sounds. Like, I have the ability to do these various things because I'm willing to, like, embrace the structure that's necessary so that there's not chaos. So yeah, I kind of look at my calendar about a week out in terms of like what do we got this week? But honestly, Corey, I wake up in every day and I open the calendar to say, what are we doing again today? So like this morning, I've got 3 podcast interviews that I'm being interviewed on today. And so I look at that. I met with our Andre Pastors business builders today. And so to just kind of look at in my early morning hours, to look at the upcoming day and start getting mentally prepared. It's all there. It's structured. I'm not surprised by what's there because again, I've built a life that works. It fits the rhythm, that I need it to be for me. So, uh, I don't know if that helps answer your question or not, but
Yeah.
I would say about a month out is where I'm at in terms of my calendar at any given point.
Yeah, yeah, and I like that, and I'll just say again, I don't know if this adds value to anybody who's listening, but it really has helped me as I've grown in that, and maximizing time and those kind of things. I did start out kind of day to day. I would do the night before. I would look at what I got the next day, and then I realized, man, I really need to start looking week to week, and then soon enough now a month to month, and it really helps me to not be so reactionary.
Yeah.
And like the way you're describing it is, I plan my day and still have life like that, and so that has really helped me. I was just curious how that worked for you. I like it.
Yeah.
I do have a question there for you, John, as far as it relates to entree pastors. And you guys, you're helping pastors create new streams of income and start businesses. Why do you feel like that's important for pastors to be able to have? I don't know where people are on their faith walk and those kind of things either, but sometimes people have this thought of my pastor needs to just be the pastor.
Yeah. Oh
You know,
man.
like, yeah,
How
right.
much time we got, Corey? How much time can we talk about this? I'm
Let
passionate
it
about this
rip,
subject.
John. Let it
Bro,
rip.
I have grown up in and around pastoral ministry my entire life. So like I really know that world well. And what I can tell you is this. I think a lot of people have a caricature in their mind of what a pastor is, maybe shaped from late night cable, television where they see Joel Osteen and I'm not knocking or whatever, but like if you think the average pastor, flies around the world in their private jets and goes from one mansion to the next, I'm here to tell you that may be 1%. The vast majority of pastors, including probably yours, if you're an average, church attender here in the United States, the average pastor is broke. Financially, they are barely scraping by. And and I'm just at a point we came to a position a while back of saying we're done with this narrative of the starving pastor. It's going way back to the beginning of my story when I really struggled to surrender. That was part of it. The money piece. I watched my parents struggle, and I grew up in a relatively poor setting, and all the pastors I knew I didn't know any pastor who was doing well financially. They were all poor. And so when I did finally surrender to serving the Lord by preaching the gospel, I basically said, and I to struggle financially. And I'm, sad to say that agreement for a really long time. And it took a long time for God to get through to me with this message of, hey, John, I never asked that of you. Like that was your idea. You brought that to the contract, not me. And it took me a long time to realize something about the model of what we have built and what we call the church, the institutional church, is very broken. And I say this as someone who's still in it, and I love the church, but what we've built, this idea of a pastor who gets their full-time salary from a church as a career, as a job, I believe has created more problems than it's helped. And I'm kind of on a mission to change that by either helping pastors entirely shift into a second, into their own independent stream of revenue, or at least add an additional stream of revenue through business rather than trying to just get more money from the church budget, which is such an uphill battle. And so, yeah, there's so much there. There's so much limiting beliefs and mindset around what we call ministry versus what's not. Think about this for our audience that's listening. Many of them probably are not pastors. What does that imply if you say that, well, your pastor's in ministry and you're not? Or if he were to get up and say, well, I've been called to ministry. Well, what does that say of you then? What's your job? Like, you're not serving people, you're not in ministry as you're out in the marketplace every day. So that's one of the things with Entre Pastors, Corey, that we've really come against is this narrative that there's somehow a dichotomy between real ministry that pastors and missionaries do, and then just whatever this other icky secular work is that the rest of the world does. It's all ministry when it's under the authority of Jesus. All of it's ministry, and So we help our pastors that we serve as clients, we help them see that business is ministry. Turns out there's a whole lot of people in the marketplace who need Jesus who aren't coming through the door of your church this Sunday, Pastor, and you probably are going to have way more impact and opportunity to serve as you're in someone's home painting a wall or fixing something or in your brick and mortar store or whatever your business is, you're going to encounter a lot more people who need your help than when you're holed up inside of a church office for 40 or 50 hours a week. And so, and by the way, it pays better. Whatever that is that you're doing out in the marketplace, it pays way better than what you're making sitting behind your office in your, church desk there. So anyway, that's just kind of a high level overview of some of the big themes that we wrestle with. But at the end of the day, I love the church. I love pastors. I just think the model that we've leaned into in modern history of funding it is proving to be really ineffective. And I think there's a better way of doing it.
Ooh, I'm on the same page with you there. Right. I love that. Well, let me ask you this there, because I think this will help even those who may not be in ministry or anything like that. But when you sit down, when say a pastor comes to you and they do coaching or they come into one of your groups there, how are you helping them discover the fastest path to cash? Like those streams that you talk about.
Yeah, sometimes a pastor comes to us already with an idea in mind. They've always thought of doing this or that business as some extra income. And other times they have no clue. They just know I need more money and I'm willing to do something. So how can you help me? And in that case, what we do is we really start helping this pastor take an assessment of how has God created them? Like, what are your skills? What are you passionate about? What are your talents? What are you interested in? Like, let's lean into that and let's find a way to then solve a problem out in the marketplace. As a pastor, those skills are transferable to the marketplace. If we can get you out using that same skill set, we just have to package it differently. And so let's help you solve a real problem in the marketplace. Something that has really annoyed me lately and that I've kind of started to come much more quickly to just call out. One thing that's not uncommon at all, Cory, is to see some of our pastors when they say, "Okay, I want to go into business." They invent something that is in the world that they're very comfortable with, which is the church. And so they'll say something like, "Well, I'm going to write Sunday school curriculum for churches, or I'm going to create a coaching program for pastors, or I'm going to write a devotional book for church people." I used to be a little bit more gentle and kind of like play with that idea with them, and I've come to the clarity and the boldness now just to flat out tell them nobody wants to buy your Sunday school curriculum. There's nobody going to Google searching for your devotional book right now. I'll tell you what people are Googling in your community right now, pastors. It's who can fix my fence, who can paint my living room, who can whatever. Go solve a problem that people are actually asking for help with. And I just get to be the one to kind of break the bad news to them. Like, you have a skill set, but you need to marry that skill set to problems that people are actually looking to have you solve, whether that's in a service-based business. And it's not to say that a pastor can't use the skill of like public speaking or counseling or coaching or some of those more intangible skills. They certainly can monetize that. But if you want to make money quickly, let's get out in the marketplace and solve a problem where there's already people asking for that. And that's kind of my specialty is the service-based space. Like I can help you very quickly get a business up and going where you're doing some kind of service-based work. And not only have I experienced it myself, but those are the ones that we seem to have get the most traction the fastest with are those people that are willing to pick up a tool, a pressure washer, a chainsaw, whatever, and go to work. I can help you make money very quickly in that space.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you what I see in that the service-based industry. If if you've got any professionalism, if you carry yourself with professionalism, do things with excellence, man, you will crush it. Because most people in some of those service-based industries don't show up, don't do a good job. I know people. I've got a lot of friends in real estate. They flip houses, they invest in real estate. getting people that they can trust to show up and do a job and do it well is very difficult. And so if you can feel like what you're saying, fill that void there, show up, do things with excellence, do it with professionalism, do what you say, the things that we
Yes.
preach on Sundays,
Yes.
like, man, you will crush it. So
And you don't have to be a pastor for this to be true, but I often tell our pastors, you have an unfair advantage in the marketplace if you only realized it. If you just bring that skill set out into the marketplace and do what you just said, Cory, actually show up when you tell a customer you're going to show up. Pick up the phone when they call. Do the thing you say you're going to do. And oh, by the way, if you treat them well in the process, if you look professional and play that part when you show up, in that service-based space where people are so accustomed to people not answering the phone, not showing up when they say they're going to, stumbling out of the truck looking like they just got out of prison. Like if you can just be a little bit above the level of suck, you're going to do great in the service-based space. So I tell our guys all the time, man, you can crush it as a handyman, as a pressure washer, a landscaper, lawn service, painter, whatever the case may be, because the bar has been set so low in those trades, and it's the opportunity is right, man. If you can step into that as a professional, you can charge like a professional, and people will be happy to pay you to show up into the most sacred space that they have, which is their home, and to know that you're going to take care of it and be trustworthy. You will not hurt for business. The phone will keep ringing, I promise you.
yeah, man, that's good. Well, before we really wrap up, I would love. I know you've written a book. Can you quickly tell us a little bit about what's the title of it, and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, the title is Rural Church Rescue. So for many years, I pastored in a rural setting, and I had a platform I built called the Small Town Big Church Podcast, which really created content for church leaders in a small town or a rural church setting. And the book is really me taking my background in the fire service and using that as a metaphor for some leadership issues and conversations I wanted to have with pastors in the rural church. And kind of the big idea is if your average local fire department operated like your average local church, we would fire the fire department. We wouldn't put up with it. But in the church world, we just call it church, and we put up with a lot of dysfunction and a lot of stuff that needs to change. And so my book is basically offering several key principles where the rural church can expand and grow in a healthy way and really restore some health to some otherwise unhealthy churches. So it's kind of an interesting book of me taking those two worlds of the church world and the fire service and blending them together and holding up some really important lessons from the fire service to the church, essentially.
Wow, that's really cool. I love that. And so Jon, if there's somebody listening, there's like, man, I want to connect with that guy. I really want to get connected with what he's doing. How do people find out more about you? How do they connect with you?
You bet. If you just go to entrepastors.com, and you'll be able to connect with all of our social media channels and everything there. Entree Pastors, we just took the word entrepreneur and the word pastors and we shoved them together to make a new word. So entrepastors.com, go there, and I'd love to serve anyone. If you want to jump on a call or if there's anything I can do to be of service, man, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm very approachable and I would love to have a conversation.
Nice. Very good stuff. Well, Jon, man, truly appreciate you, and added a ton of value to our listeners today. And man, if he's said anything that's really stirred within you, I'd highly encourage you to reach out to Jon, connect with him there. And so, Jon, appreciate you coming on, spending some time, and adding value to our listeners today.
Again, Cory, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for taking a listen. If today has added value to you, highly encourage you to share it. Get this content into the hands of people that we know can add value to them. Make sure you like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with any of the latest episodes of the Cory Lee Show. Hope you guys have a great day, and God bless.
3, 2, 1. Okay.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope I have added value to you. And if you have found value in this episode, let me know. Drop a comment and make sure you share with a friend or family member. See you next episode.